Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Eczema podcast. Today I am here live with Mikkel, and he is here from Germany. He is going to be our expert today, all about bedding and bedding materials and what the best type of bedding is for your skin, especially if you have eczema or sensitive skin. Don't forget that you can drop your questions in the comments, and Mikkel will be here to answer them. He also owns a bedding company, so he has been through the whole process. He knows which certifications are the best, and he'll also be able to share whether organic is actually the best. So, Mikhail, welcome to the show, and we're so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
It is my pleasure. So, I would love to dive more into this topic, and maybe we could just start by hearing a bit of your background, how you got into this, and how you became an expert in this field as well.
Sure. I've been working in medical devices for almost my entire adult life, but I started off more in the area of cancer treatments, and I worked for a software company, and we developed software application for doctors for treatment of late stage cancers, and that was something I found really exciting and interesting. But at the same time, something in deep in myself was always that I feel we should do much more about prevention. Preventative measures are not as popular as curative, because, as you can imagine, with curation or with curative medicine, you can earn much more money, because people, when they're really sick, they're very desperate. They buy anything. But if you tell people to spend just a little bit money to prevent a disease, people are not as willing, because they think, oh, I'm fine, there's no problem. But I believe that, we're moving into an age where we, also with data, we understand better how how things that we use every day affect our long-term health. And even though I, understood it's, business-wise more tricky to do that, I found that there is a lot of important things that have to be done. And I've, my whole life I'm suffering from, suffering is maybe a strong word, but my whole life I've, dealing with seborrheic eczema, which is a type of eczema that is also something that you can't grow out. It's just something that you have to live with. In my case, it's mostly dandruff, and sometimes it, goes into my face, and then people always say, "Oh, you look so stressed," and then, I feel like I don't have stress. It's just stressful that people tell me that I have stress. But and I found strongly that the materials, the textile materials, make a big difference. And a story that I don't really like to share it that often, but I think that is definitely what kicked off my interest in textiles, was when my mother was going through chemotherapy, and was basically bedbound for about 1.5 years. She got very terrible black spots on her skin that we thought has something to do with the chemotherapy. I mean, has something to do with her lying and just the chemotherapy. And then our oncologist told us that very often when your immune system is really weak, your skin reacts very strongly to the dyes, to the colors in your textiles. And that just blew my mind. I'd never even thought about the concept of, maybe I thought about textiles a little bit, but not much, but definitely not about the color of textiles. I didn't even know what color is made of. And how could that have any effect on our health? And, we changed this to non-dyed and unbleached bedding, and it made an immediate change. And then to my mother, who was very sick at that time, I just gave her a bit additional comfort, and that opened my mind towards how are textiles made, and what goes into textile making. I lived in Japan for many years, and there I worked with traditional. I worked as a hobby. I spent a lot of time with traditional craftsmen, especially people that make textiles, and I understood or learned how beautiful it is that back in the day, 100 years ago, we just had to make everything from plants and maybe animal products, but textiles were just completely made for a combination of different plants, and there was no There was no pollution of the environment. There was not much energy being used, and anything that was sort of a waste could just be, discarded into nature and would just decompose. And even the textiles, when you don't need them anymore, they're just biodegradable. And I don't want to, talk too much now, but obviously this day and age, almost all our clothes are made from plastic. They're non-biodegradable, very energy intensive, create a lot of pollution. And plus they are packed with a lot of additional chemicals like dyes, like bleaches, tons of other stuff, which is not good for anybody, but especially not good for people with sensitive skin.
Yeah, and that's what I want to move on to talk about is the issues with conventional bedding. It's not something that people often think about, and even I did not know this before, especially coming across your bedding knowledge and your bedding company. I didn't know about conventional bedding having a lot of chemicals in it, which can affect our skin. But yeah, can you talk more about the issues with conventional bedding and what we
Yeah.
can usually find in it?
So yeah, I would actually, make this a bit wider than bedding. I mean, the issue is really, textiles in general. So the one thing that touches your skin from cradle to deathbed is textiles. Your skin is always in touch with textiles. We humans lost our body hair, most of it, a long time ago, or most people lost most of this body hair a long time ago. So we, always been covering us with either plants or products from animals. And so our skin is always in contact with these materials. And it's kind of, interesting that when you go to a dermatologist and say, I have this rash, people, dermatologists or doctors would the first thing should be, what has touched that part of your body where you have a rash, maybe look at that. But usually it's, buy this cream or do that this, consume something else instead of looking what am I using and what is in there that is, not working for me. So the discussion should really be about textiles. And I think people with sensitive skin are in a very interesting position because we'll talk about it for, pure selfish reasons, but it's actually a huge environmental problem that, our textiles now are, basically have become one of the biggest contributor to microplastics and landfill pollution. And that's kind of what I want people to, why I really enjoy being in a podcast like this or being in interviews like this, because I can, instead of just, saying, oh, buy our bed sheets, they're the best, just telling people, there's a big problem with textiles and it affects our health personally and it affects the health of the planet. With bed sheets in particular, there is one thing is very important is bed sheets. First of all, it's the textile you touch 1/3 of your life. You touch it when your body recovers. You can't prevent your skin from being stressed when you go outside. There's sun, there's different temperatures, so your skin has to work when you're awake. But when you sleep, your immune system shuts down and needs to recover and repair skin, repair your organs, and has all kinds of things to do. But if you are sleeping in a bed that, let's say worst case, all right, like a polyester bed with some whatever Disney motifs printed on, like neon colors, like these kind of 100% artificial things that are just made from plastic where your skin can't breathe, and at the same time you're in touch with really strong chemicals, that have proven negative effects on health. Then of course your skin doesn't sleep. Your immune system can't shut down. It continuously has to work, and is on a level of being stressed. Plus all the things that your body has to do, to get rid of toxins that you have in your body, to allow sweat to evaporate. All these things are prevented as well with these synthetic materials. And just one additional aspect with bedding that I think a lot of people are not aware of, especially synthetic bedding that's made from plastic, has to be treated additionally chemically. There's an act in the US, I think it was in 1985, but maybe somebody can look this up and correct me. But that was when they said that any kind of synthetic bedding needs to be treated with with flame retardant material, because people smoke in bed and then they burn. So and these flame retardant materials, this is a very strong chemical that in addition puts a lot of stress on your skin. So that's why also we decided, we have this huge thing about textiles, but we went into bedding because that's literally the most important textile that you have. And if you think about it, you wash your underwear and your socks, you wash that hopefully regularly, but your bedding, that's on your bed for, days, weeks, sometimes months. Um, and it's really important that this is something that contributes to your health and not deteriorates your health further.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize what is in textiles. I personally only started looking into this more recently, but even there were some articles that came out about how experts were warning about fast fashion retailers like Shane and other fast and AliExpress about how there's high levels of chemicals in clothes, even in kids' jackets and in purses. I think it was like 20 times the amount of lead that you're allowed to have in it. So just thinking about that and how conventional bedding, like you mentioned, if there's a lot of colors or neon colors, there can be other chemicals in it that we don't even realize or think about. I think a lot of times we remove certain household products and we try to use cleaner creams, but we don't think about the textiles, the clothing, the bedding that we use.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's you don't see the tree, you don't see the forest for the trees. It's so close to us that we don't, we look around, oh, this is bad and this is bad, but this is the things that actually touch your skin. And these reports, they sound very alarming, and sometimes it may feel like, oh, there's just something else now that I have to be careful about, and when can I just go back to live a normal life? I mean, at the end of the day, we all get old and die, so you can't prevent, you can't prevent your body from experiencing harm. But with textiles, it's really true. There's very poor consumer protection when it comes to textiles. I can give you one example that I found super shocking. And there was an exhibition in Chicago from a Dutch artist that collected clothes from brands, from for what you call it, cloth donations, and she took the label and cut out the material, and then actually the label said whatever 80% wool, 20% nylon, and then she actually put a lab report under this, and she did. There was a whole wall with like 200 textiles, and about 1/3 were just labeled wrong. It said 100% cotton, and then it was actually 80% polyester, 20% cotton. And while it was more a piece of art, it really made you feel like, why is this not illegal? And it was like, big brands, all the brands that and there's actually no law that you can't do this. If you mislabel your textiles, maybe you can, if somebody reports that, you might get a letter, please change your label, because they can always say, well, that's what we thought we buy. We bought this from somebody else, because these companies, they're not the manufacturer, right? They just contract the manufacturer. And these supply chains are, famously long. So you have no idea where it's made. I mean, go to a shop and ask, where's this cotton from this t-shirt? They think you're an insane person if you ask this. Of course, they don't know where the cotton is from. But, for food, you wouldn't accept that. If you go to a restaurant and they sell meat and you say, where's that meat from? You think a good restaurant should know where the meat is from. They probably don't, but at least there's a kind of, I would say that we are a bit further when it comes to food than textiles. So, and anyway, this is just important for people to understand that there are certifications and there is a little bit, but it's all in all very poorly organized, and is very, very poor protection for consumers.
Actually, even thinking about the types of textiles that you come into contact with, even with masks that you wear regularly now, I'm sure a lot of those you're breathing in daily. And I know people are getting issues from wearing masks all the time, but even those textiles can have certain chemicals in them that you're inhaling all the time. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And those, just think of these typical 3-ply disposable masks. There's this polypropylene, that's some kind of type of plastic. And sometimes people wear them for a really long time, and then the hairs kind of come out. that stays in your lungs forever. So, I'm all for environmental protection, but please, replace these masks as often as possible. This is material that can be recycled, so put it in a recycle bin. But these are things that you breathe in, and they enter your body, and the long-term effects of that, we don't know in 10 or 20 years. We'll see. But it's important to understand that textiles. I met a wise man who once said, to me, like, humans wear tubes, and we care a lot about the inside of the tube, what goes in, but what goes outside of the tube is as important. So be aware of what you surround yourself with, because we have always an interaction with the chemicals that are around us.
Yeah, I think that's great that you brought that up. So now that we talked about some issues with conventional bedding, what should we look for in bedding for sensitive skin?
All right. So I want to say, generally, bedding, I would say the rules are very similar to other textiles as well. So one of the best materials, or probably the very best material for people with sensitive skin, is cotton. And it makes a big difference whether the cotton is organic or not. And don't be fooled, less than 0.5% of all textile articles are organic cotton. So it's actually very difficult to find pure organic cotton. You can, a lot of brands label their organic cotton if it only has some portion of it is organic. You can even get a lot of certifications as well for just being partially organic. So, and the difference is, to tell you why, is if you use a lot of pesticides and a lot of fertilizer, these chemicals stay in the cotton, and they make a very beautiful pure product. They make it impure. And if you look for labels, and here I can advertise definitely the company GOTS, GOTS. They not only make sure that the cotton is organic, but also that the work conditions for the people that work on the fields are good, and that they have social concepts or environmental concepts for the surrounding region. That I think is also important, because one of the biggest ways how, I'd say, I don't know, bamboo or other companies are trying to sell their products is by saying how bad cotton is for the environment and for the people. I think this GOTS helps with that you have a third-party certification, but other there are other certifications as well. And generally, organic cotton is the better choice when it comes to cotton. So I would say, number one, be it bedding, be it textiles, cotton is a very good choice, because it also has functional benefits, like cotton allows a lot of sweat to evaporate, and it's one of our skin is not just a barrier, but it has one of the function it has is to transport particles out of your body. So it's some kind of a breathing function, if you want. And a lot of the transport happens through sweat evaporation. And if your sweat cannot evaporate, so it turns into air, then the sweat and the particles get stuck between the skin and your textile. That happens with plastic. So if you've ever worn a cheap plastic shirts, and you go out in the evening, you have fun, you come home, you take off your shirt, you go, oh my God, I'm so smelly. And it's not you that's smelly, it's that t-shirt that eventually is a plastic bag that has prevented this evaporation from happening. And what then really happens is the toxins and the microbes and whatever is in your sweat kind of ferments on your skin. That's very bad for your skin. It's very bad for your body as well, and it makes you smell bad. So in cotton, one of the functions it has, it allows, it absorbs sweat easily, and then allows the sweat to be evaporated. So I would really say, when it comes to people with skin concerns, that is pretty much the best thing that you can do. There are other products as well. I think, how to say, honorary mentions would be Tencel, which is basically made from wood and other materials, where it's chemically broken down and then spun into yarn. Bamboo can have a similar effect. The thing is so Tencel is a protected brand name, so they check out that the quality is very good. It's if it's basically viscose, but when it comes to viscose and bamboo, then it's not really reliable. You don't really know how it's been done. So with bamboo, you can have a lot of residual chemicals in the textile if it's done poorly, and it's often being marketed as a much better alternative to cotton because of labor condition and water usage and blah blah blah. But the whole aspects then of what is actually in the textile is actually good for me, um, that I think is unclear, which is the reason why I have 100% all my clothes are from cotton, and I would say probably 80% of my clothes and my textiles are from organic cotton.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Yeah, I've started using more organic clothing as well. And I've been able to find some that are affordable in case people think that they're not affordable at all. There are some brands that are definitely more price conscious and they're not over the top. So if you're interested, you can always, type in organic clothing in your area and then just go to Google Shop and then you'll see all the results there.
Yeah, for sure. And one aspect also to keep in mind is um, a t-shirt. A t-shirt can last you. A t-shirt can technically last your lifetime if it's well made. It's nothing that you have to throw away. The average lifespan of a piece of textile in the US is between 6 to 24 months. That's way too short. And that's why we tend to buy these very cheap materials that break apart. I often hear from people that said, "Oh, I bought this at whatever H&M and it looked great, but after wearing it a couple of times, it already looked worn." And so one thing is also with clothes is it is totally fine to spend more. You don't need to buy so much. Just buy good quality. Unfortunately, obviously, there are people who are trying to make a profit by pretending that things are organic and then they're still very bad in quality. But there are a lot of companies who trying to produce better products that last you longer.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Can we also go over the certifications that we should be
Sure.
looking for, especially with bedding or even other clothing, textiles?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we can. So I mentioned before a GOTS, that's Global Organic Textile Standard. Um, they are pretty probably the biggest brand right now when it comes to organic. Then there is Oecotex. Oecotex does things a bit differently. Oecotex certifies basically each step of the supply chain based on how they work. And what Oecotex checks is actually if the final product has residual harmful products in there. So Oecotex is very popular for baby products. And a lot of people here in Germany, basically all baby products have Oecotex because what you really want to know, is there anything in there that can harm my child? These are the two biggest. There are smaller regional ones in the US. There's the organic brand for made in the US. We have the same thing in Europe. Those are a step down in terms of how strict they are. And then there are tons of smaller ones up to that level that companies just say this is our organic label. I think it becomes a bit technical and maybe boring, but when you actually look is how good these certificates are, you'll find out that even the highest standard like GOTS, it's not, we're not talking about something that's crazy amazing and very hard to achieve. So with GOTS, you can get a GOTS label if you have majority of your product being organic. So you can still have non-organic parts in there. I mean, they say it on their homepage, they're open about that. And then something that, for example, to me or to us was very important is that we also avoid using bleached cotton. And there's literally we didn't find any, there is no certification that does that. So usually cotton is not pure white. It has a tiny little bit ivory color. So if you've on our homepage, if you'd see when you choose white, you see it's not white, it's a bit ivory colorish. That's the natural color of cotton. And we thought also, this is for people with the most sensitive skin, so why use any bleached cotton? So there's no certification for that. And there are certifications for skin specifically. That's in the US is the National Eczema Association, and then the psoriasis National Psoriasis Foundation. Both of them have a seal of acceptance. And what those companies do is they both look at your marketing claims, what you say that you do for their communities, and what certificates do you hold. Because we're small company, and I'll tell you that in all honesty is, we put so much effort in these certifications and being proper. And very often I just I wonder, nobody's really checking this. We say all these things, and there's no government authority that comes and you said you're doing this and that. Nobody checks that. And I can see even in big companies how maybe somebody leaves the company and forgets to do some paperwork, and then something doesn't get done. So that goes back to what I said, to the consumer protection is really, really weak. So you really have to go with brands where you have a feeling like, are these people honest with me, or do I believe that this is a soulless big corporation who's just trying to tell me something which they don't do? So at the end of the day, trust your senses and your feeling more than you trust any of these certifications. I think if you're in a shop and you ask questions about their organic cotton or whatever, and they talk about it and they have knowledge, it's a good sign. If you're in a shop and you talk about organic cotton and I have no idea, and it's like, oh, yeah, maybe this over there, maybe they're not educating their people and they not take it seriously. So in our company, we'll train everybody until they are fed up with it. And when you go on our homepage and you open the chat box and you ask the most random question about certifications, so on, everybody will answer to the utmost detail, because to us that is really important. And I think, yeah, going back to, I think you gotta trust your gut feeling when you buy products.
Thanks for sharing that. And it's very interesting you shared about the two certifications, the GOTS and the OECOTEX, if I pronounce correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I started looking for that, especially in the towels I use, because it's coming in contact with my body, my family's body. And so yeah, I appreciated what you shared. Another thing that I think that you have as well, I really appreciate that your bedding company, in case anyone's interested, is called iZone Bedding. And I really appreciate that you actually post all the toxicology reports, the antibacterial quality, because not a lot of other companies will do that, and I think it's very rare. So yeah, it's nice that you have included all that information.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy because you think, as I mentioned, like, I think everybody, all companies should do that. I mean, if they tell you we use this and that, so why don't you post a independent third party review? And these things also. And this is one thing I want to tell you and everybody else who's listening and going like, why isn't the world different? There's only one reason why the world is not different. It's just money. All these things, an organic cotton, if you buy a ton of cotton, the first time we started about 4 years ago when we had this idea and we went on Indiegogo, we're like, okay, how much is a ton of cotton? I have no idea. So I got the price for a ton of cotton, and I said, all right, how much is a ton of organic cotton? And I thought they made a mistake. I was like, this is not much more expensive. It's a bit more expensive, maybe, I don't know. I think at that time it was like 25% more expensive. I was like, how is this that it's only marginally more expensive, but we are drowning in these like, non-organic, poor, bad working environment products. And then, you really realize, well, if you're a big company and you buy millions of tons and then you can save 25%, that's millions of dollars you're saving. But if you go back to the end consumer product, you go like, what a pity, everybody can pay 25% more for the product at the end, if that means we avoid all this wastewater and poor working conditions and potential toxins for your body. And also all these certifications, these are not crazy expensive. They cost money. And of course, maybe for a startup, I admit, for a startup it can be paying $10,000 here, $5,000, it can be a lot. But when I look at the big companies, how they're failing us, I feel if people actually see what kind of amounts of money they would make, for these companies, it's really shocking. These things are not much more expensive um, when it comes to production. And I think that's something that we should understand. And I think um, I believe, I hope we're just starting, the conversation starting. We have lots of people coming to us and saying, oh, recently found out about the textiles and I'm interested, and people become more aware. But I think we're going into a movement and people will ask more questions about textiles. They're very important for our health and for the health of the planet.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And I would love if you could clarify regarding sustainable fabric. I've heard that it's not actually that great and that there can be a lot of chemicals in there, but feel free to, correct me if I'm wrong on this.
So sustainable is a very tricky word because it's one of these greenwashing words. What's the meaning of sustainable? What does it really mean? I think humanity is not sustainable. You go out and you pollute all the time, and you are a burden to the environment. You need to consume energy that has been produced through some other organisms on this planet. So um, the word sustainable is used a lot in marketing. It sounds great, and it's kind of one of these words, oh, I'm using something sustainable, I don't have to worry about anything. I think the cold hard fact is, anything you consume in your life, it had to be made somewhere from some materials, and it had an origin on this planet, and it also will eventually go back into the cycle, and you just have to be aware of both of ends. There are companies that say it's sustainable because they grow it on certain fields and so on. I think, we are trying to not use the word sustainable because I think it's because I believe it is part of this greenwashing world that a lot of textile companies are moving into, because it's kind of this, it makes people feel good. At the end of the day, with sustainable, I think, ask companies, why is it sustainable, and really ask stupid questions. I mean, what does it mean sustainable? At the end of the day, think about it. The energy has to come out of the soil somehow, and then it's transported to somewhere else, and then it goes into landfill. So it cannot be sustainable. Yeah? Sustainable is if we use less, if we consume more consciously, if we not just look as, what is, where to get the most bang for my buck, and then I throw it away and buy. So I personally think the word sustainable is something. I have a lot of complicated thoughts that are just unloaded to you, but I hope you could kind of follow my ramblings.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I appreciate your thoughts on that. And I also want to touch upon this whether organic is actually best. And I might even share a part of your website just for people to see the infograph on it. But yeah, I would love for you to share whether organic is actually best.
Yeah, well, but I'd be interested. What part are you going to share?
This part where there's
Yeah,
standard bedding, organic bedding, and
yeah,
yours, and it looks like standard bedding most contain chemicals. But
yeah.
what about organic bedding? What's
So I mean, organic is, the word organic is, with the word sustainable and a lot of other words that people use in this, in this industry to show how great they are. It's obviously a very overused word. So an organic bedding or an organic textile, one thing that it always exclusively refers to is the fiber. But a textile is not made from just from a fiber. It's made from fiber and from color. Most of our textiles anyway are colored, and that's something where we wanted to make a very stark difference to any other product is, and that's the main difference about our companies. We only use plant-made dyes, so we use the colors that were used before the year 1900, before there was chemical colors. So all our colors are made from plants. You harvest indigo or other plants and ferment the color and then dye. So that is in terms of the dye, the big difference that we do that other companies are not doing. And finishing is also very important, because you finish a textile, if you think about it in terms of, I don't know, a piece of wood or something, you put some varnish over it so it's kind of closed and protected. And that's also an area where a lot of people, most companies, put some synthetic finishing over that often, keeps the chemicals in the textile so they don't leach out to your skin. But then sometimes, this finisher wears off, and the finisher itself is not very good. So we only use plant-made finishing. And anyway, we have no need for any strong finishing, because the chemicals we're using, the chemicals, the plants that we're using to dye, they are not poisonous in itself. Quite the opposite. Plant dyes are very good, have very good medicinal properties, like being antibacterial, and having other skin healing properties. So the difference between us and organic bedding is pretty wide, and that's because the standard for organic is so low. Just back to the thing that I said in the first place, when they say an organic, organic cotton, that only refers to the cotton, but what touches your skin is not the cotton, it's the color on the cotton.
That's really, really interesting that you shared that, and I really appreciate it. So that means that organic bedding can still be misleading. It can still contain chemicals because of the dye and the finishing, and you really
Sure.
have to have the certification for it to
Sure,
be.
yeah. And I mean, it's just how, how high are your standards. As I said before, you can say depending what certification you use, but most certification would accept if you say 65% of the cotton is organic, then you can call it organic. And, then you're 65% organic. But, if I have sensitive skin, I don't want to have 65% good, I want to have 100% good. So the standard for organic is very, very low. And these companies, these big companies, these behemoth companies that supply all our textiles, they've noticed that people like to have more organic things. So they are slowly and slowly, pushing down the barrier to what we think is organic and what should be organic. And it's basically, if I may use a swear word here, is just 20% less shitty. It's not organic. It's just a little bit less shitty than it used to be. But the overall trend, by the way, I want to say, we are not going into the right direction with the general, with the general development of textiles. We're actually going to the opposite. In the last 20 years, we've replaced pretty much all natural fibers with polyester. Right now, I think it's 80% of all new textiles are made from plastic. And that number is increasing every year by a lot. So if people feel that textiles have deteriorated in quality in the last 20 years, that's spot on. Like for general textiles we're using, that is the case.
Wow, thanks so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. It's unfortunate that a lot of companies can get away with so much when they say that it's 60% organic, but then the rest can still contain dyes and finishing, which may not be optimal.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I also want to talk more about you have a toxicology report on your website as well. I know that most companies don't really do this, so wanted to talk more about how important
Yeah.
toxicology report is.
So so I talked a lot about OEcotex, and this is pretty much what OEcotex is certifying. OEcotex looks at, do you have any residuals in there that are not good for your health? And that's a strong aspect of OEcotex. We did not get OEcotex. For one, it was actually too expensive, and then we also had an issue with our natural dye, that Oecotex is not yet in the place. And I actually do think they're changing this, but they were not in a place to certify natural colors, which is, our frustration with the current system, that if you're trying to be much better than the current system, then suddenly you're kind of falling out of the patterns. It's a little bit with GeoTS as well, this is the reason why I mentioned that, at the end, you should also trust your gut feeling a little bit, because you can cheat with these certifications, but some companies also, they fall out of that, of the framework that these big certifying bodies have made. So that's one of the reasons why we posted the toxicology reports, because we make these tests regularly, because we want to make sure that we don't have any of these chemicals in there. And the report you just opened also contains color fastness, which is also important for the quality of a textile, that the color doesn't wash out, especially when you work with natural dyes. And we just like to be transparent, so people understand why we do what we do, and the way that we want to interact with clients is pretty much on eye level, and say this is what we're doing. I read the question, but I can't hear you because you muted. But
Oh, sorry. So for those who are saying that certain textiles or fabric might be too expensive for them, if it is very high quality, can they actually, or can people actually remove certain chemicals from fabric by washing it?
That's a good question. So unfortunately, washing is actually more often washing is actually adding additional chemicals. So washing is something that is very important, and it's something that we always stress with our customers, is if you have sensitive skin and you're buying something like our bedding or other textiles, you gotta replace, or you gotta check what washing powder you use. And there's luckily now a lot of companies that offer certain organic detergents, and there are other ways of washing where you don't use detergent at all. But detergent is often contributing actually towards chemicals in your clothes. So can you remove it? So maybe you've noticed that most companies, pretty much all companies, say, oh, before you buy, before you wear that, please wash it, which, a clear indicator that whatever's in there is not good. Why should I have to wash? Why don't you wash it? So the washing will over time, wash out some of the chemicals, for example, formaldehyde, that gets reduced over time. But it depends. Not all chemicals are that loose in the textile. If you, for example, have something that's made from polyester, that will never wash out because that's the actual fiber. And the dyes itself, they also, they don't really wash out. They're very, they're very strong, integrated into the fiber. So yes, washing reduces chemicals that can be harmful, but they're not, not all chemicals can be removed from textiles.
So even if we have a shirt that's 5 to 10 years old, that means it can still have the chemicals that exist on it.
Yeah, sure. But I would say, if you have a shirt that's 5 to 10 years old, I'd say congratulations. It's great that you're wearing a textile for such a long time, and yeah, that would be my feeling. Good that you haven't thrown it away after a short time.
That's great. Thank you. So, lastly, let's touch upon the antibacterial quality of your fabric versus conventional fabric. I know you also have a graph on your website, but yeah, maybe other people would be interested in hearing more about antibacterial quality, because in some cases I've heard of fabric like silver actually helping our skin, and even like Tencel fabric with zinc being helpful as well. So yeah, I would love to hear more about this.
Yeah, so silver, tencel, bamboo, there's a lot of textiles that have or claim to be antibacterial. So first of all, why is antibacterial even important? Or, do you need to have something that's antibacterial? So you want to wear a textile that helps your skin to do the functions that your skin does anyway, which I mentioned earlier, is your body pushes out toxins in the sweat, and the sweat evaporates, and these microbes are exposed to either the sun or air, and then die off, and and your body is your skin is free of those. Cotton does that in a remarkable way very well. even though it's not our natural skin, but it does it in a a very supportive way. And a lot of the antibacterial qualities from cotton, from actually an organic cotton, just come from the ability to quickly expose microbes to the air so they die off. And a lot of actual natural fibers do something similar. And if you think about it, plants or trees or hang on, trees are plants. All right, plants. Let's say plants. They need to protect themselves also from microbial overgrowth, so they have these antibacterial qualities in them. And if you deal with this natural product in a careful way, and you manufacture this in a careful way, then you can maintain these properties in the final product. And so, for example, I can tell you that we did a test with our indigo textile, and indigo is a plant as well that is very antibacterial in itself. And the way we ferment the indigo and we dye the cotton with the indigo makes it extremely antibacterial. So it's something that you'll wear it or you have it in your bedroom, you'll notice immediately the smells that you have in your bedroom or the smells that you have on your body. You noticeably that this is gone and it doesn't smell. Also, indigo clothes or textiles you can just hang up overnight and they don't smell like sweat in the next morning. They pretty much kill off all the things that create this kind of stinky this kind of stinky textile smell. So this is something great about plants. And now let's look at sort of man-made alternatives like silver. So silver does something similar, or on a more chemical level, that it kind of goes into interaction with these microbes and kills them off. But silver, is a metal, and by the way, there's copper, there's caffeine, there's all kinds of greatly engineered ways of like making things antibacterial. And this is, I think, where we come to an area where, like, I think maybe this is great for something that NASA is doing, but this is kind of over-engineered, and it also costs a lot of energy. And then you're wearing metal on your skin, and there are some reports that there's some negative side effects that you need to be aware of. And I think it's unnecessary to do copper or whatever infusion into textiles when nature just simply provides us these materials right away without us, doing some kind of over-engineering. And then I know that bamboo and tencel, they also, or viscose, they have antibacterial qualities. It really depends on the products as well. With viscose and bamboo, it also depends how much chemicals they're using when they're producing this. So you can't generalize from saying that bamboo is always antibacterial. But one funny thing is that I was very surprised that the graph you showed was our study on indigo. We did a study only on what we call virgin cotton. So that's really cotton just taken from the field, no bleach, no treatment, no pre-dye, and then just being woven into textiles. And we found, actually, we were surprised how antibacterial just cotton is if it's not been bleached, if it's not been treated with pesticides. And it is actually very antibacterial. The only problem is it is very difficult to find a company that sells unbleached 100% organic cotton. It's almost, I would say, my favorite product because it's so simple and it's really, really good. It smells great. It feels really, really nice. And you can really feel a difference when you're in touch with that textile.
That's great. Yeah, I think last time you also shared with me that when you're at certain hotels, you can't. I think your skin is really
Yeah.
sensitive to certain bedding, and so you actually have to use higher quality
Yeah,
fabric.
that's the problem, is when you get used to something, when I sleep in hotels, I wake up and I'm itchy, I can really, and I really feel when whatever is inside this pillow, whatever's in here, it's not good, it doesn't allow me to get my regular healthy sleep. So, I mean, it is something that once you become aware, it's just you grow a new antenna, you become more aware. I can tell you honestly that 10 years ago, if I touch different textiles, I probably couldn't tell you tell the difference between something that's synthetic and then organic. And right now, I'm so aware of the difference that I understand the quality makes a big difference to the quality of my life. So I've become much more, you know, careful with what I do. So yeah.
That's great. So just to summarize what you shared today, I know you mentioned that conventional bedding does have a lot of issues with it. There can be formaldehyde, a lot of chemicals, bleach, like you shared about colors, dyes, and even organic fabric may not necessarily be the best unless it has certain certifications where it's not greenwashing, but the certifications are there to hold the company to a higher standard. But it sounds like your plant-based indigo or even other unless it's well certified, it may not necessarily be the best.
Yeah, I think there's there is just no good the standards are not very good, and the certifications we have are better than nothing, but they're not a perfect solution. And I think that you should do your own research, and don't be just blinded if somebody says, we're sustainable, organic, blah blah. Really look into it. And also a summary. I think I've made this clear. I think cotton is a great use for people when you're sensitive. If you are if you feel on your body you have a place where you're especially sensitive, I think either try to use undyed or even light colors. Even dark colors have a stronger chemical load than light colors. Definitely avoid with your underwear, for sure. Underwear, avoid polyester. Everything is better than polyester, so avoid polyester. Cotton is the best choice that you have there as well. And yeah, just become more attuned with the amazing products that nature has for us, and then try to call out companies for using halfway, half plastic, half cotton products, and trying to sell it like they're saving the world. And yeah, and then give smaller companies a chance to like prove that they're doing something different, but also there ask questions. Not every small company that pretends to be great is great. Also be critical with them. And yeah, and if you want me to, I think at the end of the day, what I told you when we first spoke is, I think with sensitive skin, I think, as silly as it sounds, I think it's a gift. You're more sensitive to the environment. These are poisonous, toxic things for everybody. We're just more sensitive. We notice them easier. And this is an antenna for just looking out for better quality in life.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was really great having you on the show. Did you want to leave your betting information and contact for people to learn more about iZone betting?
Sure. Yeah, I leave it. Should I leave? Where should I leave the?
You could just mention the website and then people can go and
Okay.
find it.
So it's Aizome Betting. That's AIZOME betting.com. And before you buy, just go into the chat, ask questions, ask hard-hitting questions. We're always happy to not only to answer questions but work with you. And I understand, obviously, that there are much cheaper options for betting than our company. What we're trying to do is, to people like you who are curious and who would like to try this out, we'll offer an entire year that you can use the product for free. And if it's not 100% your cup of tea, then you can return it for a full refund. I think that's the only company that offers that. But we're convinced that the moment you're using it, you never want to go back to anything else.
It is amazingly soft. When I tried it, it's so much softer than other ones I've tried. So I was very impressed with the quality.
Thank you. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, so it was really nice having you today, and I hope all of you learn a lot about bedding and textiles and other material, even for clothing. Hope you can apply this knowledge for you and your loved ones as well. Stay tuned for more episodes on the Eczema podcast, and thank you for listening.